Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's the 20th of April, 2016. This is Christopher Aaron. This is the iGold Advisor channel, and we are going to be focusing on silver for this presentation, for this video, because the move that we have been anticipating, that we've been tracking week in and week out, is finally unfolding. So we want to take a look at how that looks for the short run, some of the targets, and also keep things in perspective as to the long run. The move was very strong over the last 2 days, very good to see. This is no longer in the realm of hypothetical. This is no longer in the realm of when prices start to accelerate after the long-term bottom, as we were talking about last year. Now we're in a different mode, which is what do we expect from this advance that is now unfolding? So we'll be looking at everything. Thank you for being with me. Let's get right into the first slide. I will see if I can keep this up for a little while. How does that look? So there's some important news to discuss before we go any further. This actually came out about a week ago this time, and the news was about the price fixing litigation involving Deutsche Bank and several of the other large multinational banks. So the news is that they have agreed to a settlement after litigation in the U.S. courts for manipulating some of the trading activity, some of the short-term trading activity. So this is really incredible on a number of levels. First, what are the facts about this? So they've admitted to manipulating the prices in the short run. Intraday, especially, price fixes. So secondly, we are looking at this involving a number of different banks, not just Deutsche Bank, but they have also conspired with Bank of Nova Scotia, HSBC, and several others. So this is a large network that is going on right here. So a few things. As you know, most of my work, I do not focus on this theme of manipulation. If you watch some of my older videos, I've often stated that I do believe that the precious metals markets involve some manipulation. I really do, and that is very visible, especially on the short-term time frame. Now, I was actually interviewed for this litigation by one of the attorneys, and so it was more of a fact-gathering conversation that we had, and some of the things he was asking about had to do with, for example, signals that institutions could use to signal to one another as to when perhaps the price might be dropped lower in a brief moment of time. And then, of course, the banks would come in and cover those short positions, kind of flushing out speculators. So I have often believed and known that there is manipulation in the precious metals markets. However, I always say this as well: I do not believe the manipulation is stronger than the markets over the long run. If anything, they can affect the short run, which can sometimes impact some of the intermediate term trends. But clearly, these markets cannot be manipulated forever. If they could, gold would still be $255 an ounce, and silver would be $3.50 an ounce, as they were a few years ago in the early 2000s. So manipulation cannot work for the long run. All markets are always stronger than all attempts to manipulate them over the long run. So that's where I fit in with this. And for that matter, I think most markets are actually manipulated. Maybe not to the same extent as the precious metals, because of course there is the political backdrop of the precious metals as an anti-dollar or an anti-fiat currency sort of thermometer, if you will. So yes, is there some special interest played into the precious metals? Certainly. But that said, look at anything. Look at short-term interest rates. The definition of the Federal Reserve holding interest rates at 0.25% is manipulation. The only way they can do that is to suppress the natural rate of the interest rates. And this is openly discussed. So I believe there's manipulation in all markets, including the precious metals. What's fascinating about this is the first time that we're actually seeing the banks admit to this. So this is really fascinating. And could this have an impact on the precious metals? I mean, if we go back and look last week on Wednesday, there was really no immediate reaction in the precious metals to this announcement. However, we are seeing the strength come into the metals today, and especially over the last few days. So could this have something to do with that? Yeah. Is it possible that some of the interests in the precious metals are saying, okay, hey, let's turn our attention to another market for the time being? And so as a result of that, when there's new physical demand coming into silver that is now being unopposed by some of the shorts that were coming into the market previously, yeah, that seems very likely to me. So this could definitely add some fuel to the engine of the physical demand for precious metals, and if anything, quicken perhaps the advance that we were expecting to see. So it will be very interesting to watch this. I'm especially going to be watching to see the volume of contracts that are traded in silver over the next few months. If the volume of contracts actually goes down at the same time that prices are going up, that would be a strong indication that a lot of these parties have moved out of this market. And we'll see, is that price discovery mechanism more efficient as a result. On that note, we have a new price discovery mechanism that just opened up a couple of days ago in China. The Shanghai Exchange is now going to have their own fix for gold prices. So we haven't seen a huge impact in this over the last day or the last week in the price of gold. However, I think anytime you're talking about a decentralization, a movement from having just one group setting the price as far as the paper contracts that are being exchanged to multiple groups that have a say in what the price is, I think that's a good thing. You know, in general, the farther we get away from centrally planned, either central banks or, centrally planned types of things for the financial markets, I think the better, because the more open, the more transparent the markets can be, the more efficient that they can be. So this is certainly a good sign, I think, over the intermediate and the long run for the precious metals, especially now that it looks like some of those banks are going to have to stay a little bit more below the radar screen as far as any attempts to manipulate. So all of this is very positive for the precious metals. And we're going to look at the prices of gold and silver now. I'm going to remove my video so that I can have the full screen for the charts. Okay, very good. So we're looking at the price of gold over the last 3 days. Gold is still consolidating in a gently bullish uptrend channel. Has not made any new highs recently. Comparing this to silver over the exact same time frame, and boy, did we have that move that I was warning people about over the course of the last few weeks on silver. That came on Thursday. Notice where the bulk of the move happened, right when we broke above that 1625 region that served as the former resistance. 1625 was finally taken out after multiple attempts, and boom, a 50-cent move followed by another 30-cent move, closing above $17 before falling slightly back right underneath $17 for today. So basically a 5% move over the last 2 days in the price of silver, and reaching prices that we have not seen in well over 6 months. Now, we need to put this into perspective. Looking at the last year's worth of action, we are no longer talking about trying to find a bottom. That's the important thing to remember here. the trajectory has changed for the price of silver. And so it's important to change your thinking a little bit. Whereas most people still in here and in here were very afraid, now we are starting to see some more attention being brought into the silver market. And the pattern that resolved here that caused this dollar spike higher and that I believe has a higher target coming was this inverse head and shoulders pattern here. This is very clear to see with the resistance level at 1625, which when it was broken to the upside was decisive, right? So coming back to levels that we last saw, actually about a year ago, let's call it the previous May. Now, let's zoom this out and put this into perspective. Here was that inverse head and shoulders pattern that has completed. This is a valid pattern. So, ladies and gentlemen, what happens when we are evaluating these patterns here from a technical standpoint is we find the amplitude for the head and we add that to the breakout point. And that gives us a rough idea of where the target is going to be for this initial move. So this was roughly a $2.50 amplitude. Let's call it 1375 to 1625. So we would add that $2.50 onto 1625, giving us a target right around here, 1850, 1875 to be exact, highlighted by this green ball right here. Now this green arrow shows kind of starting from down here, lower price level, but this is just really to show, I drew this over a week ago, this is to show the target that we're looking at here. So it looks like this is getting ready to make an advance toward that target. Of course, you could have backing and filling happen at any day. So you could have that dollar move higher that we saw, followed by a 30-cent or 40-cent correction, followed by another 70-cent move higher a few days later, followed by another 30-cent correction, etc., lasting over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks. This should take us to this target of 1850 to 1875 or so. Now, the interesting thing is when this target is hit, this entire period from February of 2015, let's call it through the summer, is going to represent a giant head-shaped cup type of pattern, if you can follow my mouse right here. And what do we have here? An even bigger shoulder, left shoulder here forming. And so essentially what I'm saying is the silver market is kind of forming this fractal pattern at the moment of a smaller head and shoulders pattern that is being resolved, which looks like it will set up for an even larger head and shoulders pattern, this being the left shoulder, this being a massive 1.5 year head, and I would expect that we see in this fall something like another lopsided shoulder similar to this one. The target for this one will be significantly higher. It would be something like a $5 move from this 1850 level. Of course, we need to see that 1850 level broken, and the question will be, does it break initially? Is this run going to be stronger than even I anticipate? Or are we going to get this nice, evenly distributed, embedded head and shoulders pattern to do it for us? That's really the only question in my mind. Mind you, it's such a different landscape that we have now. Rewind in your mind 6 months. If you've been with me on this channel, I mean, we were having, not even 6 months ago, 3 months ago, when I saw this long-term wedge pattern shown in the turquoise color, turquoise being the broken lines, when I saw this break right here in February, is when I started to write and I started to produce these videos saying, guys, the downtrend is over. And there were a lot of people saying, no, it's not over yet. The downtrend's not over because it's still a lower high coming in here, et cetera, et cetera. And I was saying, yes, that's true. But if we look at the other evidence in front of us, the price of gold, the performance of the mining sector, and if we look at this as a wedge pattern, not just as lower highs, but what is the message of the lower highs, the wedge, where the highs are coming down and the lows were coming down, but not as steep as the highs. It was showing us buyers were coming in at relatively higher levels, getting ready to overwhelm the sellers. And now we're starting to see that. So this move higher here is coming from all those people covering their shorts here who are expecting prices to go lower, and people who failed to buy anywhere underneath the $16 level. Zooming this out, I want to have a real clear picture now. In the long run, I believe, to be completely honest, in the long run, anything that makes you money is a good purchase, right? If you buy silver at $50 an ounce and it goes up to 85, which would be my target for when silver is broken, my first target, some years from now, then that was a good purchase. Then $50 was a good purchase. But relatively speaking, when we're talking about the formation of this long-term bottom and what is setting up for the move to come, I believe that anything below this 1850 level, this double horizontal line right here, is going to represent really good value. These will be the purchases that you are saying, man, remember when I bought silver back in the teens? So the teens will be sort of the golden years of silver, and you'll be telling stories to people about how you bought in the teens when they're buying in the 30s and 40s and above 50. And they'll look at you like you were some kind of prophet. How did you know? Well, you know because you were doing your own research, and if this has helped any, then, well, I'm glad for that as well. So I think anything under this $18 level is going to represent the long-term bottom period here for accumulation. Why? Because we're really just talking about, this is all we've seen so far. We have just bounced. We're looking at the 35-year chart now one more time. We have just bounced from this rising linear trend line here dating back to 2003. We have broken out of this wedge-shaped terminal bottoming pattern, and we are just accelerating away from it. So you see what I mean? Anything here in this, below this $18 range, is really going to represent the gentle cup-shaped bottoming pattern. And then we'll be looking at some point as prices perhaps hug this line or move away from it and then come back down toward it for a little bit of a correction. We'll be looking at some point in the later part of this decade for prices to make their next attempt at 50. And mind you, when prices get back up to 50 a few years from now, they may not break through right away. For example, look at what happened in 2008. We're talking about this $20 region. So there was an attempt at 20, and then prices crashed back down in the crash of 2008. And then notice when prices got back into the vicinity of 20, it actually took about a year and a half. Once they got close there, they fell back again, and it was a year and a half later that prices spiked through 20. So it very well may be that if prices approach 50 again at some point, let's say in 2020, that then there's another period of 18 months where it consolidates below 50, just similar to here. These patterns are often embedded and they repeat on multiple time frames. So that's what I'm expecting going forward. Just a quick look at how we've been doing in the mining complex. A lot of people are interested in that these days because these companies have really taken off. It's very exciting if you're invested in this sector as well. So just looking at some of the relative performance here, we're showing over the last 3 months, since the beginning of the year to be precise, the performance of silver, a large cap silver miner, a mid-tier silver miner, and a junior silver miner. So we've had silver bullion itself up 25% over the last 3 months, 3.5 months, from 1365 to just around 17 today. That's 25%. We've had a large cap silver miner up 90% over the exact same time period. We've had a mid-tier miner, that's one of my favorite mid-tiers, up 275%. And we've had one of the smallest junior miners that we follow up 600% in 3 months. So we're getting some nice leadership here from the mining sector. Just as an example, I have people that I do consultations with, and there are a lot of stackers who are also interested in learning more about this. I mean, for example, one of my clients put $5,000 into this mining company that has doubled in the last 8 days. $5,000 doubled. He took his profit, his extra $5,000 out, kept his initial investment in the company, and went out and bought 250 Silver Eagles that he wouldn't have had otherwise. So there's some fantastic opportunities here developing. Just please do your research. Please make sure you know what you're doing. And keep in mind that this move that we've seen, including these multi-100% moves over the last few months, some companies doubling in a week or two, we have seen that with just this rise in the price of silver, just from 1365 to right around 17 today. So all I'm saying is, seriously, folks, the opportunity ahead of us is monumental. Imagine what's going to happen to some of these companies when the price goes from 17 back to 20, back to 25. What about 35? What about 50? What if the price breaks through 50? And the reason why I'm producing these videos, this is just to rewind this for anyone who's new. Yes, I do this for a living, but I do this for a living because it's something that I believe in. And if I thought the price was going to be going down over the next few years, I would set up an analysis website to help people short these markets. I think the price is going to be moving higher, and I think there's some serious opportunities across the sector. And I want as much wealth to end up in the hands of people who perhaps have an independent way of thinking, or perhaps who have some higher visions, some morals or some ethics, or at least want to do something with their wealth to add some beauty or add something good to the world. Yeah, that's generic, and that can be for each person to do as they please with the wealth that they generate. But that's what I'm really hoping is 5-10 years from now, a lot of the people listening to this are able to do some things with their lives that they weren't otherwise able to consider. And hopefully some of those things involve working together for some positive changes in the world, some good changes, some fun changes. Switching over to gold. Just really quickly, we're going to look at the trend here that is forming, which is just a really gentle sloping uptrend at this point. Nothing much has changed from a week ago. So there's definitely been a coming down of the gold to silver ratio. We're not even going to look at that this week. We'll perhaps look at that next week. as silver has advanced significantly, with gold basically treading water for the last few weeks. So all those people who were trying to scare you a month or 2 months ago by saying, well, this move in the precious metals is fake because silver is not confirming gold's move, they didn't know what they were talking about. That's as plain as I can say it. Silver doesn't have to confirm gold's move ahead of time or at the same time. We know that. Silver can lag for a couple of months, and then it might lag again for a couple of years, perhaps corresponding to the break of that 50 level. You might see gold break 1900 a year or two before silver breaks 50. That's kind of something that I'm anticipating at this point. So it looks like gold is kind of setting up. Perhaps it's going to wait for this short-term uptrend that goes all the way back from the lows, which was rising really slow, and then gold just shot off like a rocket. And now it's been consolidating. So I'm wondering, is gold going to keep consolidating until those technical-based buyers who follow these types of charts as I do, those folks are going to be looking to buy once the price of gold meets this line, which might be in June, late June, early July, somewhere in this region. In summary, gold's still consolidating, as we just said, above the important trend breakouts. Very important. Silver, the head and shoulders bottom pattern was confirmed. There can be no denying that now. I would love to see if anyone has technical analysis that shows me how silver is still in a downtrend. I would love to see it. I don't see it myself. Our target, 1850 to 1875, anything in the teens will represent excellent long-term value if you have a 3 to 5 year time horizon, at least at this point. And if anything changes, we're gonna have good early warning indicators. If something comes out of left field and totally changes the trajectory here, we will have a warning. And if I see that, if I see some signs that, hey, wow, things have really changed and it looks like silver might take another massive dip lower, I will bring you what I see as I see it. I do not see that. I see that we are just starting to round out of these bottoms. Thank you very much for watching. The next update will be 1 week from now. I hope you have a pleasant evening and a nice weekend ahead.